this is a question to kind of summarize or kind of sum everything up. If you could go back in time and do anything different, what would that be, if anything?
I would have just gone for it. I wouldn't have waited so long. I should have just done it. You just need to believe in yourself. I feel like that's the most important part because that's what's going to get you through the application process and that's what's going to get you through school.
All right, welcome everyone back to the episode of CRNA School Prep Academy podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Finnell, and today we're have a special guest episode today, and I'm so excited to start this series. I thought for a long time, like it'd be really cool to bring more of our students on the show because every time I hear a success story and just they always have so much gold to share with our community at large as far as what their experience was like getting accepted into CRNA school. So today we have our guest, Monica. Welcome, Monica.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, so happy to have you. So today's topic, you guys, is something different we've never done before, and that is getting accepted to CRNA school without current ICU experience. Yes, I'm going to say it again, getting accepted to CRNA school without current ICU experience. In fact, cath lab experience. So yeah, I would love, we're going to share all the juice and all the details. First, I would love to have you, Monica, share your unique nursing background and why you chose to become a CRNA.
Yeah. So I initially graduated nursing school August of 2015, and I went straight to the ICU. That was my goal, CRNA all the way. But imposter syndrome kind of gets to you, and I just was like, I don't think I'll ever be good enough. I'm just not going to worry about it. I'm not going to apply. So I worked in the ICU for 4 years and left the ICU and went to work for a cardiology clinic and left that. And now I am in the cath lab right now. So then there was an opportunity, a new program has been in my hometown. I think it's pretty fairly new, 2 years, 3 years old. And I was just like, well, you know what? I just need to go for it and apply. And if they don't accept me, it's okay. I'll just go back to the ICU and work and try again. But they accepted me.
Yay! I know. Congratulations! I'm so excited for you.
Yes, thank
So
you.
I love that you shared the fact that you suffer from imposter syndrome because this has to hit home for so many of our listeners that maybe they go into the ICU with the best intentions to go back to CRNA school, but they start feeling overwhelmed. They start feeling scared of like, what if I get rejected? And just all the things of, am I really capable? Am I smart enough? What if I do this and I hurt someone, or whatever the fear may be that is keeping you from taking that leap of faith. It
Mm-hmm.
hindered you completely to the point where you just decided to leave altogether.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind me asking, like, had you during that time you left, you worked in the ICU for 4 years and you spent 3 years working either in between a cardiology office and a cath lab. Were you still thinking about CRNA that entire time?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was just like always thinking about it because I worked in the cardiology clinic, but I worked for a cardiologist, so we would always round in the hospital, and he does cardioversions, TEEs. I see CRNAs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When we're working in the cath lab, I still see CRNAs all the time, and just always in the back of my head, I was just like, oh, I need to go for it, but it's scary.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And kind of what, other than having this program that was relatively new and you're, close by,
Mm-hmm.
what was it like a deciding, what made go through your mind when you finally decided, yes, I'm going to give this a shot?
I think it was just more of, you're still thinking about it. You just need to go for it and, just got to go for it. And if you fail, it's okay. Just try again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I love that. So you essentially, I feel like that helps a lot with imposter syndrome too, is when you think about what is the worst potential outcome and why is that so bad? Because that actually is one thing that really helped me kind of get me off the ledge too when I suffered from imposter syndrome is, what's the worst thing that could happen? No? Okay. Well, I'll just figure out how to do better next time. And so that's really, it seems so simplified when you put it that way, but I think it lets it not seem as scary when you know the outcome. The worst case outcome is just the fact that you have to try again. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And so I love that. I think that's great. And I also want to, in case you guys didn't pick it up earlier, Monica spent 4 years in the ICU and then 3 years outside of the ICU, between the cardiology office and the cath lab. So just keep that in mind for a little bit later in the show when we kind of discuss other unique things. But I kind of want to back up before we get too far in advance. Is you said you always knew you want to do CRNA. So even when you were in nursing school, was there any kind of predisposing moment? How did you find out about the career path, or was it simply just because, you know, in nursing school, other nursing students were interested as well, so it kind of pushed you to learn more about it? Or I guess was there something else that would kind of?
So, whenever I was in high school, I had to have a couple of procedures that required anesthesia. That's where I initially knew about the profession, was a CRNA, and ended up being a classmate of my mom who was my CRNA. And she was like, oh yeah, I'm so and so's mom. She's like, don't worry, I won't tell him that I saw you here, you're here. And so I just remember her just being so caring and making me, feel better about what's about to happen. She explained everything that she was going to do. And then I found out she was a CRNA. So in high school, that's whenever I started looking into it. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to be.
Cool. That's really awesome. I love that. And I'm just curious now, did you happen to write about that in your personal statement, or did the school know that, or was that?
No, I didn't write it in my personal statement, but I did talk about it in the interview.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I love that because it kind of gives it, and I think the reason why I want to highlight this, you guys, is because a lot of people, will say, I've been wanting to be a CRNA for ever since I can remember. But you have to understand that we don't know where you came from. So I love that aspect of it right there. Well, how so? Like, because I mean, otherwise, did you see it on Discovery Health? Did you just hear about it from someone, or did you actually have an interaction that really shaped your life? And that's an interaction. I think that's really meaningful. And if you don't have this, don't feel bad, because I sure as heck didn't have that. But I equally, like, for me, I don't even know if I knew what a CRNA was at this point, but I was in high school and I job shadowed. And I was really fascinated by what they were doing at the head of the bed. Although I, at that point, wasn't in tune with what Anna's CRNAs were or anything like that. But it definitely gave me my first exposure to, like, wow, they put people to sleep for this and they take away their pants. It's so cool. So I think people want to know that aspect as far as how you got into knowing about the career path. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Let's get into more of your application stats. While I want to preference this by saying that I don't think stats, everyone wants to know stats, but I equally think that stats can be dangerous in a sense, because I want you guys to all know to not play the comparison game. So I have to just say that before we start. But I know people are interested. But just because, Monica has certain stats does not mean you have to as well. But I get it. You want to know because you want to know where you measure up, but understand that you are your own unique person and that the schools want that. So please don't use this as a way of saying, oh, I'm not good enough. No, just get that mindset out of your brain right now before we even go into it. But Monica, let's go ahead and share your application stats, like GPA and things like that.
So my overall GPA, so I went to a college and then I transferred to, this specific other college that for nursing school so I can obtain my bachelor's degree. And so the overall GPA was 3.3, and my nursing GPA, like just the specific nursing courses, was 3.5.
Okay. Do you know what your last 60 credits or anything like that was? Or
no,
okay. What about your science? Do you know what that was?
No, I don't know. I just remember the overall was 3.3 and nursing was 3.5.
Okay. All right. So I bet, if your overall was a 3.3, and that was probably where you did some of your chemistry and
Right.
Okay. Okay. Well, I love that you pointed out, because if you look at the overall big picture, you guys, that's probably not what I would consider as a super competitive GPA for CRNA school, but clearly, given other, and you work current ICU. So this is a really prime example of a lot of kind of myths that are out there that you need to be a certain thing. It's just not true. So thank you for sharing that. What about, I know you were talking about your ICU experience, but what about had you shadowed or what other like leadership roles maybe that were you involved in or other volunteer activities?
I was a preceptor in the ICU. I wasn't in any other type of leadership role though, just preceptor.
Okay. How
And
many
then shadowing,
yeah.
and then with shadowing, I wasn't able to shadow anyone. I did try, but it was just always just a big ordeal I wanted to shadow outside of the hospital that I worked at. And it was just that, I don't know, it was just too much for them, I guess, for paperwork. I'm not sure, but I just never could shadow anyone. So I never did shadow anyone.
Okay. But I would think, you working in the cath lab and working with CRNAs, you were pretty
Mm-hmm.
well aware of the role of a CRNA and kind of
Yes,
from start to
absolutely.
finish what CRNAs did. Okay.
Right.
So I think that, I think that that's key for me in my mind because, for example, if you were a MICU nurse like me, I rarely ever ran into CRNAs. I mean, I like a small handful of times. I can maybe count on like one hand if I ever saw a CRNA, and it was usually it just wasn't often that they ever came to the MICU. So, but you might be exposed on other units, like if you're in the a CVICU, take advantage of the fact that you do have connections with CRNAs because that right there is a great segue to say, hey, I would love to shadow you sometime. Would you be willing to can I give you my number or can I get your number? That kind of thing. Just don't be afraid. All they can say is no. Just ask. More than likely, they're not going to say no. I will say, like I used to drop off patients all the time in the CVICU. Just be cognizant of, obviously, you know better, but if the patient's stable and the CRNA is like getting ready to leave the room, they're just charting, just be cognizant of kind of keeping an eye on them and give them the space they need to make sure that things are finished. Because I know, like for me, I'd have to run back to the OR to start another open heart case. So I was, not always had tons of free time. But there was definitely some periods where if a nurse approached me and asked me that question, I'd be happy to give them my cell phone number and let them be in touch with me later. So that's just a great opportunity right there. Same if like you're in the cath lab, exchange the digits. And I'm sorry to hear about the shadowing. And this is a very common experience too, to outside shadowing. And it's so much easier to get a shadow experience where you work. Would you mind me asking, Monica,
Mhm.
what your hesitation was with shadowing at your hospital?
Well, so my hospital, I wanted to shadow a local level 1 trauma hospital, and I felt like I would see more if I shadowed over there than the hospital I worked at here. That was really it.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess for those of you listening, I would love to just share the fact that don't be afraid to go to your own hospital. If it means not getting the experience versus getting the experience, try to always just shout out your hospital if you can get any experience, even if you think it's not going to be as good. I highly encourage that because while I know the situations we're talking about, obviously it has a very happy ending. I just know some schools are very particular with the shadowing experience. And if you don't have it, even if it's a recommended experience, not a required experience, it could not play in your favor. So, for me back in the day when I did it, I didn't ask permission. I don't know. People are always like, I need my permission, my nurse manager. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't. Like, I just walked down to the anesthesia office and said, hi, I'm a nurse here. I would love to shadow a CRNA. And the chief CRNA was like, hey, nice to meet you, and took me under his wing. And I kind of went on from there and had several shadow experiences with CRNAs without my nurse manager ever even knowing I was there. And I did show up on my day off to do that. In fact, one
Mhm.
time I walked down after I got off work. I worked an 8-hour shift and I walked down to the surgical department after my shift. And the other time I just came in on my day off and asked. And so don't be afraid to do that. No one's watching you with binoculars. If wear a wig, wear sunglasses. If you're that afraid, someone's going to watch you. But at the end of the day, it's still worth trying to get the experience if you can. All right, thank you, Monica, for letting me go on about that. What about any volunteer experience? Did you have any volunteer experience outside of the hospital even?
No, I did not.
No, okay, that's okay. I'm not asking, just simply letting the listeners know. And it's funny because even like back when I applied, I obviously wasn't at the time wasn't mentoring other people, but I didn't know any better myself. I didn't even precept. I never charged. I did some committee work, but I didn't have any recent volunteer experience either. So it clearly didn't hinder me either. I had volunteered back in college and then back in high school. Very minimal volunteer experience, like a soup kitchen and I was a candy striper. I volunteered at the hospital every summer throughout high school. So I didn't have
Mhm.
any recent shadow or volunteer, but I think a lot of people get so worried about having the right volunteer experience or enough. And I just want to kind of paint a picture that even if you have anything, like that's okay. To not kill yourself trying to get 100 volunteer hours for CRNA school. It's at the end of the day, it may not matter. Um, they just like to know that you've done other things outside of your role as a nurse for the most part. If that's what most schools will say. I just want to see if you're well-rounded, is what they'll say. So we talked about the shadowing experience, that it was hard for you to get the out of hospital shadow experience. Did you have any issues with your references, and who did you have to ask for those?
So the school required an old faculty member, a supervisor, and another person. It could be anyone. So I ended up asking my old charge nurse in the ICU and my old ICU supervisor and a nursing instructor that I had back in nursing school.
Okay, awesome. And I love the fact that you were able to even ask your old ICU charge and ICU nurse supervisor, because that had been 3 years. Were they, and the school didn't have a problem with it, the fact that it wasn't current, because they clearly stated that your ICU experience had to be within that 3-year mark.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention on your applications, you guys. If you're not current in ICU, pay attention to how long that you could be out of the ICU. Monica specifically said they said 3 years was the maximum, which she had hit exactly that maximum. Most schools will expect a current ICU nurse manager, because they also equally expect current ICU experience, which again can be a problem even if you're traveling. It might be ICU, but it's hard to ask an ICU nurse on a travel assignment for a reference when they barely know you. So a lot of ways to get around this is to stay contingent at your longstanding ICU position, so you technically still have a current ICU nurse manager who knows you well for those. And then faculty, that's a common one that I don't think a lot of people, when they're in nursing school anyways, like you don't think I gotta make sure I get someone who's going to be my future reference for grad school. At least it wasn't on my radar
Mm-hmm.
in nursing school. And it wasn't until after I graduated from nursing school and I started looking at more of and I had looked at the requirements, but I don't remember the faculty piece sticking in my brain for some odd reason until right after I graduated. I started really diving into the requirements as soon as I graduated nursing school. But then at that moment, I'm like, oh, I need a faculty. And I luckily had someone who I confided in about going to CRNA school, because again, for me, I had been working for this goal even as a nursing student. So I confided in it was my senior year. She was the ICU nurse coordinator, educator, and I confided in her, and she helped me land a SICU ICU rotation in nursing school because of that. So it was no surprise when I reached out for a reference letter. But was your instructor, how long had you been out of school, since the time of?
Oh, yeah, it was like 7 years. But I was been friends with her like on Facebook. Um, so we were able to kind of catch up with each other, with Facebook. But all I did was just message her, asking her, and she was just like, "Absolutely, I will." Don't be afraid to ask, because I was kind of afraid. Like, it's been so long, do you remember me? But no, she did remember me, and so she said, "Yeah, absolutely, I will do that for you."
Yeah, I love that. And so those of you who are listening to this early on in the process, keep that in mind. Look into that early on if you can. And then pick out someone that you really like, that that you have an instructor, and stay close with them. Did you attend any open houses or like our CSPA conference or anything like that?
I did attend y'all's conference. It's very, very helpful for sure. And they did have not an open house. It was kind of more of a Zoom meeting. And, I feel like they didn't really broadcast it that much. It wasn't until I decided I wanted to go to this particular school that I emailed the school, and they were like, "Oh, well, actually, we're having a Zoom event if you want to attend, and we'll answer more questions." I'm like, "Oh, sure." So that's what I did, and I did that. And they answered all of our questions, and you could see other people that like I said, it was a Zoom meeting.
Hmm.
So you saw other people that were interested as well.
Nice. Okay, I love that, and I love the fact that you emailed. And you're right, a lot of schools, and it's a marketing piece, you guys. Trust me, if the schools wish they could let you know about these events, but it takes a lot. At least I found out it takes a lot of effort to market events and things like that. So a lot of these schools are obviously pretty limited, and it's not like the faculty are out there. They're doing what they can if they have a Facebook page or an Instagram, but the competitive nature of the social media space, I mean, whether you actually know they have an event is probably more up to you to look to seek it out versus expecting you to pop up on your Facebook page or your Instagram feed or land on your inbox. So if you're wanting to go to CRNA school, make sure you're doing your due diligence and try to find out when the next open house event is. All programs have one, so they will have one. It's just a matter of when it is. And like Monica said, they're not necessarily going to probably market it really heavy, so you really have to seek it out. So thank you, and I like the fact you attended our conference. While and I'm not going to disclose the school, and I never will on this podcast. Just FYI for you guys, I have to keep that private. I know that program was not at our conference, but it's still the conference. Really, any conference that's anesthesia related, whether that's a state association conference or our conference that we host every year, it's a great opportunity to not only connect with fellow applicants who are equally have a lot of questions and trying to figure out their own path. You learn from them too, just like you do on this podcast, but connecting with other faculty as well, because our community is really small and they all communicate. And then asking your questions to one faculty member can give you really good insight into what your own program would equally find valuable. So it's just great that you did that and kind of immersed yourself in that type of environment to get your questions answered. So I think that's great. Thank you.
Hey, future CRNA, another daily dose of inspiration from a CRNA School Prep Academy student. Thank you, CRNA School Prep Academy. I have applied to Case Western 4 times and got rejected 3 times. Those rejections happened before I found CSPA. After my 3rd rejection, I found an amazing mentor, Haley, through NTN's mock interview service, who told me what I need to do over the next year. I'm someone who did not do well in nursing school at the beginning with a 2.7 GPA in undergrad and a 2.74 in RN school. I didn't know there would ever be any hope for me, but I worked my butt off to get a 3.8 in my RN to BSN, and I got my CCRN at the same time. I took some advising from the program director who recommended that I take advanced pathophysiology. I got an A in that course. I continued to precept, do charge nurse on my units, and participate in some sort of committee. When I decided to do travel nursing, I was concerned I'd be looked at different. My program director at this time said while they take travelers, they found that travel nurses tend to take easier assignments than the program usually likes their candidates to take. I happened to be a charge nurse and preceptor on my current travel assignment. The director emphasized that I needed to mention this, which I did, because it put me apart from the other travelers. I also took my CSC this application year, which helped me study a lot sooner than I did in the past. I thought despite my efforts to consistently improve and prepare for my final interview at my top choice, my interview went poorly. I chose the first day, the first time slot, and I was more confident in my preparedness thanks to CSPA. Despite me not feeling the best, I wasn't going to give up. While working Hurricane Ian in Florida, I got a decision letter. I was accepted. I'm still in disbelief that after 4 attempts and 3 rejections, I finally got in. I couldn't have done it without CSPA, Haley, and the amazing mock interview mentors who have helped prepare me along the way. Use this service, it will make a difference. Thank you to all the Academy for helping me achieve what I thought was impossible. Endless thank yous. Dear future CRNA, I love this share, and you know who you are, so congratulations. I'm so incredibly proud of you. And if you're listening to this story, I would love to be able to help you as well. Be sure to sign up for our free Future CRNA newsletter just by clicking the link below in the show notes or comments. Cheers to your future. Now back to the show.
My next question, I guess, and this may be kind of and again, feel free to share whatever you wish, but what did you fear? And I know you talked about imposter syndrome, but was there anything in particular that you scared you the most about applying to CRNA school, or that you feared that you weren't going to be good enough because?
Well, not only that, but really, I mean, I wouldn't say fear, but that I would have to, end up going back to the ICU. But, I mean, I waited 7 years to apply. If I had to go back, I'll just go back for another year of experience and apply again. So that was really it, just going back to the ICU.
Okay. All right. So that sounded like the ICU experience left you like, oh, never want to return. which
Well,
is
I mean, I
understandable.
enjoyed it. I enjoyed working there. I feel like the people that I worked with made it more enjoyable. But yeah, I mean, it was, and not only that, just going back and just being like, oh, I gotta do this, start all over again. I feel like.
Right, right. It's like any new position period is stressful. So yeah, it's like accepting like, oh, but I also the fact that you said that that was what you knew you were going to have to do if you were unsuccessful, but you were going to give it a shot. And I've actually had someone recently reach out to me who has NICU experience, and she knows it's not the preferred unit of choice for her program, but they do accept NICU, which is the neonatal ICU. For those of you listening, that's what I'm referencing. Um, but she's gonna give it a shot because she's like the same kind of the same situation as you. She understands that to put the best foot forward, she might have to move back to like an adult ICU, but she doesn't want to. She wants to give it a shot with what she has, and so there's nothing wrong with that. And don't be afraid to apply and just see what happens. The worst case scenario is that you will have to do what you probably already know you need to do to get into that program the next year. So thank you for sharing that. Next question is, were some, I know you're a part of CSPA, were there CSPA resources that you found to be the most beneficial when preparing for both your application and your interview?
Yes, the mock interview library and the learning library.
Okay, yay, learning library. I love that. That's like my nerd coming out, but awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I felt like
that.
I liked that the most. And then especially, getting a mock interview or having one done, that was very helpful.
Awesome. And you did one mock, correct?
Yes, I did one.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, the vast majority of students, you guys, that we hear share their success stories, they have a lot of recurring things, which is why I asked this question, because I like to know what it is that our students find the most valuable, because for me, that's a big indicator that these are the really big predictors of success, right? Mock interview. The interview is what gets you accepted, right? We've known that for a really long time, that the application gets you the interview, but the interview gets you accepted. I can't stress enough the importance of prepping for the interview. And a lot of that starts with brushing up on your ICU education, and that is what the learning library is. We actually just renamed it Critical Care Learning Library because I wanted people to know exactly what it was. But because it's kind of multifaceted, the information we share in the learning library, it's critical care knowledge, but it's also just so happens to be part of like your curriculum in anesthesia school, meaning it's going to kind of it's going to serve you in both ways. So not only is it going to help you prepare for the interview, it's going to give you a boost when you start your programs as well. So I love the fact that you love that, because yeah, it's pathophysiology, pharmacology, all that fun stuff. And then the interviews, the mock interviews, what I think, and correct me if you have more insights to this, but watching other people do either a group mock interview or a one-on-one mock interview allows you to kind of almost have a practice run for yourself without actually doing it, because it allows you to see what they did well, what you liked, what you didn't like, and it gives you some insight as to, oh, I like the way they said that. Am I correct in that?
Right. You're totally right. And then, just seeing the way that they answered the questions, and then I would try to answer it too with them, like, oh, I would say this, and then listening to them, I was like, okay, cool, I was right. So like it did help a lot, kind of just looking at their body language, and like he said, seeing like, oh, I like the way that they answered this.
Awesome. I love that. I love you mentioned body language, because that's like the silent killer, because people don't know. People are completely unaware most of the time, especially when you're nervous and like high alert of what your body's actually doing on the outside, because you're so focused on keeping your composure on the inside that sometimes you can kind of lose reality with what you're doing. Like people start clicking their pens, or playing with their hair, or making darting their eyeballs all across the room, or they're just not smiling, right? And
yeah,
if and when you talk, if you talk with a smile, you tend to sound really happy. If you talk without a smile, you tend to sound less happy, more monotone, not as warm, not as friendly. So you really have to be kind of aware of that, because you want to come across as friendly, right? You don't want to come across, and I'm not saying you're not friendly, but it's just the inference people make when they hear a monotone speaker. So, because they're not talking with a smile. So thank you for sharing that. Now, all that being said, sounds like you put a lot into your interview prep. And the one-on-one mock interview, I also equally hear so many people say they've done a one-on-one mock interview or more. who end up being successful. But how did you feel your interview actually went?
So honestly, I felt pretty confident. I'm not going to lie. And I felt like the mock interview that I had really helped, because I felt like with the mock interview, I was just so stiff. And he told me, you need to show your personality. And I was just so nervous with them. I felt like I was more nervous for the mock interview than I was for the real interview.
Well, that's probably because you got it out of the way. I think that
right,
that first experience. Great.
But then, like I said, I felt confident, but then I would think about some questions. I'm like, oh, I should have said this, or, I would just replay it in my head and just be like, oh, I should have said this or said that. But it was just over. Ultimately, it was out of my hands at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, well, you know what? I did the best that I could and just went.
I love that. But you overall felt very confident. I know it doesn't mean your interview went perfect. I know we spoke in private that you did still miss some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And then I would love to share the question, or at least the one question that stood out to you the most that you missed. How did you handle that as far as following up with the school and things like that?
Yeah. So that question I wasn't prepared for it. It was about a medication that we use mainly in the cath lab, but I was expecting some other type of medications. So I studied a lot on that, but then this particular medication that they asked me, it was about more of a deficiency or something like that. So I wasn't sure, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know. They were like, it's okay, we'll just go on the next question. Well, after the interview, I looked it up and I emailed them back, thanking them for interviewing me, and also just letting them know I also looked up the question that you asked me about, and this is what I found out. Just kind of let them know what I found out and know now.
Yeah, so you essentially took initiative to try to find the answer that you didn't know. And so I think that shows your willingness to, even if you don't know something, you're going to learn it. And I think that's really all, that's all any educator can really ask for. I think even as faculty, they know you're coming to interview, you're not going to get everything right. They know that. But then how did you handle yourself when you didn't know it? And then the follow-up experience too, I think is really powerful. So I wanted to really highlight that and point that out. And again, we're not going to disclose the actual questions. I know you're probably, oh, I got to know this medication. I got to know, but we're not going to disclose that. But I equally want to state that this, particular medication, it can be used in the ICU. In fact, we routinely equally used it in the medical ICU sometimes too. So it's not super exclusive to the cath lab, but for the most part, know that we talk about it. And if I don't, I'm going to make sure I add it to our pharmacology lessons inside Academy. So rest assured. But anyhow, the follow through can be really important. I had another student recently, or probably about a year ago now, kind of do something similar where he didn't know the answer to a question and followed through and followed up with the faculty. They were so excited to hear from this person that they said, we really appreciate your thorough follow through. It really shows that you take initiative. And so again, I don't think all students are really doing this. So little hint, hint, wink, wink, to make sure that you're doing that. And you don't have to hit every question. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't send these schools a laundry list of like all the questions you got wrong. I mean, maybe, pick at least a few that you felt like you could improve upon the most and hit there. Versus trying to say, oh, and I could have answered this differently. Let me retell you about myself. Like, don't do that. Like, keep it brief and keep it concise. They're not going to read a 2-page essay after your interview, but if you keep it to a paragraph and thank them, it just kind of makes the thank you follow up a little bit more thorough. And I equally love the fact that you felt confident about this interview. And also, if you guys are wondering, I know she's speaking out, Jordan. I love to shout out our mock interview providers. So that was Jordan Truby that did Monica's mock interview. So shout out to Jordan. Thank you. And if you're looking for a mock interview, they're now housed through the Nurses Teach Nurses platform. We built this on purpose because we wanted to be able to serve you better and serve more of you in this area that we know is so valuable. So again, there are a lot of people who offer mock interviews on there. They're all SRNAs or CRNAs. Jordan's an SRNA, currently in school, but he's been around with us for years now. He does a fabulous job. All right, let's move on. So when did you find out you were accepted?
So probably about a week after my interview.
Okay, so not too bad. Not too much torture.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Did you find out via email or did you get a letter or both?
Yes, they just emailed me the letter.
Okay, awesome. Back in the day when I had to wait around for a letter. So it wasn't even that long ago, really. But I remember came in an envelope and I was so nervous to open it. It was like, oh, but it was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Whenever I saw the email, I thought would be getting it from the director, but it was from their facilitator. So whenever I saw her name, I was like, oh, I didn't get in. And then I clicked on the little PDF and then it was like, congratulations. I was like, oh my gosh. It was
Yay.
so, yes, I was so excited. But yes, I was kind of like, oh no, I didn't get in. But yes, same though.
That's so great. You'll never forget that moment. That's awesome. Equally suggest that you take that and print it and frame it.
Oh, yes.
When you have those bad days, or like for me, I did that, and cause I was so proud of that letter. I was so proud of it that, when I had kind of like, just days where I wasn't feeling good or I was getting beat down or whatever it was during school, I would look at that letter and be like, I earned this and I'm here and I'm doing it and I can do
Yeah.
this. They picked me for a reason, so I think everyone should frame their acceptance letter. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think that kind of that weight kills a lot of people, but I equally want to point out that you could get it via email or letter. And why I want to point out email is because just make sure you're looking for the email, checking your spam. And I know you're probably, Jenny, I can't check my inbox enough, but I've had students, not maybe for the acceptance piece of it, but for the interview piece of it. I've had students miss the request to interview, and I think it's because it's either coming via phone call or email, and they don't recognize the phone number, so it goes to their, voicemail, or the email, same thing, they miss it. So just be hyper vigilant about checking your inbox for these emails and stuff like that, because that would be sad.
Yep.
All right, so how did you follow through these programs then? I know I get a lot of questions like, how should I thank? Who should I thank? And I equally kind of forgot to ask you, when you sent that follow through letter about the thank you for the interview, did you just email the program director, or did you email the entire interview panel that interviewed you?
So I wasn't sure how to approach it, but I emailed the director with that, the answer to my question that I found out, because she's the one that asked me that question.
Hmm.
And I also individually emailed the other faculty members that were in my interview.
Awesome. I like that. I like the individual ones. It just feels a little more, if you can, not everyone's going to know who was in their interview panel, or you're not going to have all their emails. So always email the program director for sure. But if you know the rest of them, I think that's, especially if you remember a specific question they asked, right? That would, I think, be a really nice personal touch to the email. And then how did you reach out to thank them after the acceptance letter, or did you?
I did. I emailed them all again. Well, I actually just emailed the director, just thanking her and, telling her I'm so excited to start the program.
Nice. Cool. Awesome. All right. This is a question to kind of summarize or kind of sum everything up. If you could go back in time and do anything different, what would that be, if anything?
I would have just gone for it. I wouldn't have waited so long. I should have just done it. You just need to believe in yourself. I feel like that's the most important part, because that's what's going to get you through the application process, and that's what's going to get you through school.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, definitely believing in yourself. It's funny because I've noticed a recurring theme in kind of what I do with CSPA is it's really about getting our listeners, you, to do just that, is to just take that leap of faith, to take action. Nothing's ever going to happen if you're not willing to put yourself out there. You'll never succeed nor fail if you don't try, right? So yes, trying may result in failure, but trying can also result in success. So it's like, until you just take that chance on yourself, you're never going to know what's going to happen, what the outcome's going to be. And equally, if you don't take that chance, you will never know how to improvise and how to re-strategize and do something different, so you do find the success. But I love that. And I think we all probably have something in our lives where we're like, why didn't I just do it? Why didn't I hold back? And but
Yeah.
I hope that this and I know it'll reach some of those who are in those same shoes as you, Monica, who are like, I'm fearful. I don't know if I can do this. I'm not smart enough. I know for me, I was scared of not being smart enough. I was scared of being, too dumb and just making a fool of myself. Or, I mean, I was equally scared of the responsibility, right? I was like, am I going to be good enough to be a CRNA? Like,
Yeah.
I don't even think, but all that being said, I was just like probably you, where you're passing this unnecessary judgment on yourself for no reason, just because you had this mental block about who you were as a person. This journey, you guys, if you take away anything from this episode, I hope that you take away the fact that this journey really starts from within. This journey really starts with you having the belief in yourself. And that really can be supported and fostered through a community like CRNA School Prep Academy, through fellow nurses who are on the same path. I know for me, I didn't have something like CSPA, but like I had girlfriends of mine who all wanted this just as badly as I did. And we were each other's cheerleaders. In fact, we studied together, we interviewed together, and we got in together. It was amazing. But had I not had that, I don't know. I really don't know, because that was a huge pusher for me, was to see my friends who I equally respected and loved go for it as well. And I'm like, well, if they're going to go for it, I'm going to go for it, right?
Yeah.
If we're going to jump, I'm going to jump. Like, we're all going to land somehow, and we'll see who makes it out. So thank you, Monica, for coming on the show. And I appreciate you having you here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I would like to reach out to Monica and thank her for this episode. You're welcome to do so. Monica, did you have any social handles or anything like that, or any email or anything like that you want to pass on?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, no problem. I should have asked you that question before we started this episode. But I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you giving back to the community. Thank you so very much. And we'll be in touch, and I'm rooting for you the whole way through your program.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Hey, future CRNA, as always, I appreciate you and your loyalty. Thank you so very much for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear from you, so screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories with your biggest takeaway. Don't forget to tag me at CRNA School Prep Academy so I can personally thank you. Be sure to head over to CRNASchoolPrepAcademy.com to check out our blog and gather free resources to help you along your CRNA journey. Stay strong, and I'll see you next week.